This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, meet the real microbrain.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show by Ugly Bags of Mostly Water for Ugly Bags of Mostly Water. My name is Gep, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this week, I think that meme's the only thing anyone actually remembers from this episode.
Kinda, yeah. And it's not much of a meme either, so.
Yeah, which is too bad. This is one of the better ones of the first season.
Mm-hmm.
They explore some themes. They talk about some interesting stuff. They have a moral dilemma. You know, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and we kind of have a glimpse at sort of the operating habits of folks outside of Starfleet, as well as how the Federation kind of operates in terms of, you know, planetary sciences and terraforming and things like that. And so there's good stuff here, but you know, it's just kind of there, I suppose, too.
So this is the episode called Home Soil. It's the terraforming one with the little sentient doodahs and lasers. I am noticing I hadn't paid that much attention the last time I watched through Next Gen, but thinking ahead to like all the episodes that we're going to talk about, and then, you know, trying to think of things to talk about as we watch through now, I hadn't noticed how many episodes just sort of have such similar themes when you go through. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the episode where they come to the colony and find malfunctioning equipment that they later discover is a sentient life form, and then they have to deal with that. And that's different from the other one where they go to a planet with malfunctioning equipment that they discover is a sentient life form that they then have to figure out how to deal with.
Which is, you know, slightly different than the they go to a planet, but it's a mining colony, not a colony, and they have to deal with malfunctioning mining because people are disappearing.
Yeah.
Because there's a local sentient life form.
Yeah, so there's some rhyming, I guess. You know, as Lucas says, it rhymes.
You know, maybe if we just wanted to break rhyme a little bit more often, things might be better overall in terms of, you know, creative reach and interesting ideas and concepts, stories, and all that.
Mm-hmm. I should stop having perfect rhymes. Just some of those cool slanted rhymes.
Yeah.
Some of our modern musicals.
Yeah, if you want to like keep the meter, that's fine, you know. But the rhyming, you need to break it up more, guys.
So this is one of those weird ones that was written by 3 people. I'm so unfamiliar with how television writing works. So many of these have like 3 or 4 writing credits, which makes sense. It's going in, changing stuff, collaborating, etc. But you know, also we get a lot of repeat customers in this era of Star Trek because we actually have a writer's room instead of bespoke writers for every episode like we used to get in the 60s.
Indeed. You know, so I guess sometimes there's warnings to be had when a lot of writers are attached to a particular episode because they might not all be writing the same episode, even though they are technically doing so. And so that can lead to some really kind of muddled ideas or themes that are kind of thrown off. Other times, things kind of work and something kind of amazing comes out of it. So It is a thing. If you notice it, I guess it's a reason to be cautious, but you might get lucky.
So this episode, we have writing credits for Carl Gers, who wrote and directed a lot of earlier shows and a lot of cartoons. He did stuff for Flash Gordon. He wrote on The New Adventures of Zorro, something called Defender of Earth, which also in my notes it looks like that's one show name the way I've written it. So it's The New Adventures of Zorro, Defender of Earth, which I really now want to see future Zorro. Someone should work on that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, actually. Yeah.
Zorro with an energy whip and maybe like a lightsaber style thing. Someone do that. Defending New California
from all the hostile entities, occasional people from Earth that don't know what they're doing, and just general baddies of various sorts.
Yeah, it could be like Brave Star,
except Zorro instead.
He also wrote for The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. There's a lot of new adventures of in this guy's writing credits. And Tailspin, which is the one of these Disney shows that never gets enough love.
Indeed.
Goof Troop and Quack Pack.
have not seen Quack Pack.
I've never seen it. I've heard of it.
I guess one of his more recent ones is a Care Bears Unlock the Magic.
Care Bears Unleashed.
Just kind of a funny title, and you kind of look at it.
This reminds me because people have been when we're recording this, people are talking about that new Winnie the Pooh horror movie.
Because
so
public
just got
domain.
me thinking about that.
Might be a bit longer before Care Bears are in the public domain for the horror version spin-off. Oh, he also wrote for Dungeons and Dragons.
Which one?
The animated show of the early 80s.
Ah, the cartoon. I missed
Yes.
that. Never seen that. I've seen everyone reference it. I've never actually seen the show itself.
It's pretty goofy. I've not seen too many episodes, and it's been over a decade since I've seen them. But yeah, it's kind of quirky. And,
See, because I collect Legend of Zelda stuff, I have watched through the entire Legend of Zelda cartoon, and that kind of maxed me out for that style of cartoon show for a very long time.
Understandably.
Oh, also writing, we have Ralph Sanchez, who's also known for a lot of cartoons, like Dink the Dinosaur.
Not to be confused with Young Godzilla, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. He also worked on Alvin and the Chipmunks. I'm unclear which one, because there's been like a dozen of those as shows.
Indeed.
And Bonkers.
The one in the 90s. Oh yeah, Bonkers. That was pretty good, actually.
And finally, Robert Saveroff, who wrote The Immunity Syndrome for the original series.
Oh yeah. We don't have a giant amoeba this time, but we have a very small person, or brain.
Yep. And also created the series Then Came Branson.
Like Missouri?
I guess. I don't know. I just thought it was a funny name. It's the only reason I wrote it down.
Apparently only did one writing for that particular series, but, you can still create something and, only do one episode yourself.
It's the sequel for Waiting for Godot. We're waiting for Godot. Then came Branson.
And everything was bad. Now,
yeah, we like him a lot better than Godot.
Now, Robert Sabaroff also wrote another episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, which is oddly enough the next episode. So I guess we'll be meeting more of him then.
And the next episode is bad. We're not getting to it for a bit, which we'll explain at the end. But,
yes.
The next episode's not good. It's not great. It's fine. It's not great.
Hint, Wesley takes a test.
All right, we got a few guest stars. We have more guest stars than normal this week because we go somewhere. It's not a ship episode. It's a planet episode. Walter Gotell plays Kurt Mandel. He is a German-born actor who played German and Russian villains in various movies.
Indeed.
Pretty well known for playing the head of the KGB in like 6 different James Bond movies.
General Gogol and like The Spy Who Loved Me and things like that. So, yeah, he's
he's around.
Yeah, and perhaps I guess would be well known as that sort of character here. So perhaps someone tuning in is like, maybe I shouldn't trust this guy.
Yeah, I shouldn't trust this angry curmudgeonly man.
I remember him from Octopussy.
Elizabeth Lindsay is playing Louise Kim. She is a former Miss Hawaii. Soon after competing in Miss America, she got her TV debut on Fantasy Island, like I guess literally everyone who acted in the 80s did. Seems like it's just a prerequisite. You want to be an actor, you go on Fantasy Island. Here's your SAG card.
Pretty much. I guess Fantasy Island's like, we just need actors. Anyone, please come. We'll make you an actor and you'll do other things in time. Please. Funny enough, she also played a different role in the 90s Fantasy Island as well.
I never watched either of those, so I wonder how much crossover there is. She had a reoccurring role on Tales of the Golden Monkey. I keep confusing with Legends of the Hidden Temple thingy. The giant talking head.
Olmec. He's going to tell you how to go through the labyrinth, and maybe you'll have good luck.
And those dang children who could not figure out how to put together a 3-piece puzzle. Well, I understand you're under stress, but come on.
Yes. And the big piece with the square goes to the square hole. Wait, think I've solved it, Gepwood. But memes. Anyway.
She was also on guest roles on Charlie's Angels, Magnum P.I., contemporary TV shows, that kind of thing.
China Beach, the Birds of Paradise.
Then Gerard Pendergast plays Bjorn Benson. He was on a lot of other 80s TV shows, TJ Hooker, Trapped, John M.D., Matlock, etc., etc., etc.
Also in something called Generations, but not Star Trek Generations.
Then Mario Ricuzzo. That I may or may not leave this in because I'm trying to learn Italian and I'm pronouncing it bad, and my partner's going to make fun of me later.
Don't worry, we all get made fun of for our pronunciations. And that's how we hopefully learn.
So he plays Arthur Malcon. We never hear these people's last names. So
Yes.
Arthur. He did guest spots on shows like The Monkees, which I love that show. Wonder Woman, BJ and the Bear. Such a weird name. And Murder, She Wrote. So these are ones that more people have heard of, except for BJ and the Bear.
Yes. Where he played a high-ranking suit.
A high-ranking suit. So is it a real bear, or is this like an early gay show?
That's a good question. Maybe we have to tune in.
Because with BJ and the Bear, I could see this going either direction.
Well, maybe there's a bear, but it's also a bear. Also, I just wanted to say this, but he played a fellow in, what was it, Nero Wolf. He played Andy Davis, medical examiner.
I've never heard of Nero Wolf.
Neither have I.
Okay, then. Okay, let's jump in. We're probably going to spend a lot of time doing what everyone does, is comparing this to the original series, but we may as well get a start,
Let's roll.
The Enterprise has been tasked with checking on a team of terraformers. Communications have been erratic, so they went to make sure that the team is still fine, because they're in a remote part of the galaxy, which... Shouldn't every part of the galaxy be a remote part of the galaxy?
Kind of, yeah. Though I guess, if you were off in like a globular cluster, that'd be even more remote, but still.
After several attempts to elicit communication, they get a response from Director Mandel, the head of the terraforming team. He's gruff. Like, he's just the personification of gruff.
What are you dang kids doing here in your spaceship and your Federation and your Starfleet? Get off my planet's lawn.
Yeah, what are you doing on what's going to eventually in 100 years' time be my lawn? Troy can sense that the guy is alarmed, and the idea of anyone coming to visit the station sends him into a panic. Picard insists that they have an away team visit, so Riker, Troy, Yar, LaForge, and Data beam down to the terraforming control room. Here we are introed to the rest of the team. We have Louisa, Malcon, Malancon, why are these names? Just why? And Benson. Benson's the engineer and gets all geeky about seeing an android. This doesn't happen as often in other seasons. Everyone's just used to it, I guess, by then. Yeah,
it's like, I guess the word's gotten around. Like, oh yeah, the Federation Starfleet flagship there has an android on it. So don't, make it weird for him, please.
They get the tourist version of terraforming. They're bringing water and life to the planet. This is phase 2. Phase 1 was finding the planet. Now they're on the phase where they do water and stuff.
Yes, which I guess is kind of similar to how they did the Genesis experiment stuff, where sure their phases were different, but step 1 for the actual planet stuff was find the planet and make sure it has certain criteria, and that's actually more difficult than they realized.
Yeah, finding a completely lifeless planet, which is, it's interesting that, especially in so Genesis came out a bit before this. All these, it's weird to remember because they have such radically different filming styles, but the movies and Next Generation were not that far apart.
Indeed.
But Genesis did come out before this, so both of them were in the 80s, which is really interesting because the general conception that we have now about possible extraterrestrial life, I guess it was starting to come into prevalence then, but we now have this idea that there is almost certainly some sort of microscopic life, like some sort of protozoa or amoebas or something or other. Like, this stuff is probably everywhere.
Yeah,
it's going to be pretty unlikely that we find some place that is completely lifeless. It's not going to have complicated multicellular life like we are expecting.
Yeah, it turns out that building basic organic chemicals in space is actually pretty common, and you just need to deposit on a planet, give it some right environment, and there you go. You got something that is effectively life, even though it might be quite different than we would kind of our microbial everyday experiences here.
So it's interesting, given that they keep talking about, through various eras of Star Trek, how essentially impossible it is to find a completely lifeless planet. Because I'm not sure when it started becoming a prevalent theory, but I seem to remember people talking about it more and more in like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I guess I've had my ears perked for the various astronomy developments over time, and that's sort of one of those things that was kind of coming to be more well known when I was starting college and things like that, as far as ideas and knowledge about the universe.
So they found this completely lifeless planet. They've been prepping it for things, and now they're about to start pumping water out from beneath the surface onto the planet so that they can have standing water, which is the first thing you'll need for plants and other junk. Mm-hmm. This planet has a incredibly salty layer of water that runs almost completely around the planet. It's a weird geological formation, which personally I would find it kind of a shame to destroy, given how unusual it is as a planet.
It's like, this is very unusual. It has this this quality that is always at this depth throughout the entire planet. Why? That's like maybe something to investigate. And it'll delay your terraforming efforts, but to understand this process will not only help increase our knowledge about geology and things like that, but might give you insights on how to terraform this planet more effectively. Because if this, there's some mechanism in the environment that actively generates this layer, this might run up against your terraforming efforts and maybe undo them at some point, if it's, sort of not addressed.
Also, the water's super salty, so they have to filter it first. And they have to be really, really precise in their drilling because it's in such a thin band through the planet's surface, they could overshoot it really easily or undershoot it really easily. But there's been a lot of random power fluctuations that have been making the drilling difficult.
You keep missing, guys. Stop it.
So before they can explain why things are going wrong, Mandel shows up. He intentionally interrupts everyone. Apologizes for being rude before, then says, I've been isolated for a long time, you see.
With these three yahoos.
He sends Malakan away to do engineering stuff with the laser because they're on an extremely tight 30-year schedule.
Yes, so, go and do this thing right now. There's no time, man. Get out of this room. Don't talk to Starfleet people.
We can't lose seconds on our 30-year time scale.
If there was maybe some indications like, if we don't finish this drilling by a certain point in time, there'll be some process that will sort of undo all our work, or it could release toxins into the atmosphere or something like that. That might make a little more sense here. But also him being kind of like this, in retrospect, does kind of make sense that he's kind of being all pushy when it doesn't really make any sense. But anyway.
So Mandel starts to explain more of their terraforming schedule, planning process. They have a flow chart, geeky shit. Mm-hmm. Then Troy senses that Manakon is in danger. I'm going to pronounce his name differently every time. He's about to die. It's fine. It doesn't matter. He's gone after this point in the story. They arrive at a large door that's been sealed shut, and they can hear blasts and Malkan yelling for help on the other side. They can't get it open until the yelling stops, the doors open, and they just see a smoldering corpse.
Well, that's not good. Apparently the laser in here decided to freak out and kill people.
Maybe they shut off the power.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't go in there without some precautions.
Shut off the power for safety. They beam Malakon to sickbay. He looks pretty dead, but I guess he's not yet. Data looks into the laser and can't figure out why it did this because it doesn't seem to be malfunctioning. Everything's fine. It was deliberately targeted, in fact.
Almost like it's under control by some force or entity or rogue computer program. Or maybe it's just possessed by ghosts.
So part of his investigation, Data has the power turned back on so that he can watch the drilling program in action because there seems to be nothing wrong with it. And it begins firing. It's doing its normal thing, all well and good, until it focuses on the back of Data's neck.
Thankfully, Data has spider senses, so, it's going to be okay.
He does his android dodgy thing because he's not going to get hit by something as slow as a laser.
You see, Data's actually a Z fighter, so he can outrun lasers, so it's good.
So Geordi tries to open the door, but can't. Everyone's in a panic until the laser sounds stop, and the door opens to a smoke-filled room where Data's standing with the destroyed laser drill.
Well, it seems that Data's okay. He's managed to defeat the laser, now he can go fight Raditz.
So there's one death and one attack. So Picard has everyone brought up to the ship until they can figure out what's going on here because it's kind of concerning.
Was this an accident? Maybe murder?
Data speculates that the drill was too targeted for it to be a random malfunction. It must have been programmed, but it was programmed with a rudimentary artificial intelligence because it was able to anticipate his tactics and try to work around them. And right now, the only ones who could have programmed the laser are the 3 surviving terraformers.
Yeah, or Melancon himself, but he was just really bad at it.
But he got shot. That's a heck of an alibi.
Well, sometimes people try to, do something horrible and it just blows up in their face. So,
So now the station's been powered down completely. They send Data and Geordi back to find clues as to what's happening. And now that the station is dark, Data can see that the holes they were drilling have some random blinky lights in them.
Huh. Is there like an indicator signal at the bottom of these wells here for some reason, guys? Or is there something else going on?
Well, with Geordi's visor, he can see that these lights actually are unusually complex, almost comparable to music.
Musical light show. Wait, is this a laser light show? Are we going to hear some Pink Floyd?
I mean, maybe.
Cool.
That could be fun. I haven't seen people do it the other way with these data visualization things. We keep getting all of these kind of grading from a scientific standpoint things of this is what a black hole sounds like when you've interpolated radioactive data, you've taken radiation and interpolated radiation into a audible sound spectrum and gone this is what a black hole sounds like.
Just frequency shift to the very tenuous sound waves in the plasma you're observing, and technically you can hear it, but there's a lot of processing that goes into it first.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that I haven't seen anyone do is, couldn't you, in theory, take a sound wave and just scale it up in frequency until you hit light wave, and then use that to make a color spectrum?
Conceivably, yeah.
I haven't seen anyone do that. I wonder what that would look like.
Let's do that.
Then all you need is for your light waves to be mathematically, as far apart as musical notes are.
And there you go.
They
But also Geordi sees frequencies outside the human range of vision, so
that could be a thing.
So he's getting the full show where we as symbol people with TVs, CRTs in the 80s and things like that, we're not so lucky.
Yeah, this part of the show is way in the infrared. You won't be able to hear it, but it's about to get warm. All right, so these complex lights could actually indicate a life form because they are more complex than a natural, randomly occurring thing should be.
Oh, I guess Data does love looking for life forms, and he was successful here. So congrats.
So they bring the lights back to the ship. They've got one of them in a bell jar, and they have a pretty good point here. If we don't actually have any way to test whether something is a life form, there's no good way to define it. So how do we know if this thing is alive? According to Sesame Street, it has to breathe and eat and do stuff that's not a shoe or a brick. That's something I remember from my childhood.
All right, so if it's a shoe, we could put it on our feet, right? Can we do that here? No. If it's a brick, we can build a house with it. I think the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, you get but then you have those catacombs where you have them made of bones.
Oh, yeah.
Are they bricks?
Yes. So people can be bricks. I'm suddenly reminded of Captain S. But anyway, that's a whole tangent.
So the light starts humming, and when the crew steps away, it stops in response to them. And for some reason, they ask the computer. The computer's analyzing the light thing. They go, "Computer, is this alive?" And the computer's, yeah, probably.
Oh. Well, I guess that solves that. So it's alive.
Yeah, great. I'm glad the computer knows this thing that we just said no one knows. That's good. What criteria is the computer using?
Well, maybe the computer's like anything that is not me that talks to me. Uh-oh.
So Mandel is not convinced because the best experts in the Federation verified that the planet was lifeless. He doesn't believe that they could have missed it, even an unusual inorganic life form, because they verified it for him. They sent out Federation survey teams, spent years looking for these things. He is offended by the very idea that he might destroy a life form, any life form, and runs out of the room.
I think he might be in denial about something or, being shifty.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I know you, General Gogol.
Back in sickbay, the possible life form has changed. Its energy is weird. It's starting to intensify, and there's lots of flashing. Then there's two of them.
Oh my, it's spawning.
And yeah, that one clinches it, because the one thing that we know only life forms do is procreate.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a very long time, and sometimes it just spawns stuff out of nothing, apparently.
Mm-hmm. They evacuate the lab, as you do. And something...
Like, oh no, baby!
And something starts patching into the translation circuitry.
Oh, maybe we should listen to it.
So now they've confirmed they're dealing with some sort of life form, but is it an intelligent life form that's trying to communicate with them? Or is it just a space dog?
And just making weird noises at us. Interacting in a haphazard fashion. It's discovered the translation circuits, and now it's just going to gnaw on them for a while.
Yeah. Which is also an interesting one where they go, is it intelligent? Is it trying to communicate with us? I've seen plenty of animals that have tried to communicate with me. I've seen many that have succeeded in communicating with me.
Yeah, I saw a video the other day of, it's like, oh, here's my cat, and the cat's meowing at me, and are you leading me into the bedroom to take a nap? Okay. It's like, okay, we're on the bed now, and you flop over, and I guess I'll just sit here.
Mm-hmm. It's like, your dog can tell you when they're hungry. Like, we have ways of communicating. I'm not saying that means that all life forms are sentient or sapient. We don't have a good definition for any of these things, but it's interesting to me that they get so on this. It's intelligent. We know it's intelligent because it's trying to communicate. It's like your cat tries to communicate with you. Your gerbil tries to communicate with you. This is...
Yeah, just, the communication's not that interesting, really. It's important if they're hungry, but still, it's not... You're not having a complex conversation about the current crisis in wherever land here. So
now that they know more what they're dealing with, they can interrogate the terraformers again, because now they have more precise questions. And Mandela is still evading questions. It's like they knew about random energy patterns, apparently, but not life forms. Benson finally can't take it anymore, and he's like, yeah, we got there, and there were lights. We thought it was a random natural phenomenon, random lights in the sand. Then they started to move, and we're like, well, that's interesting. Then they started flashing patterns and geometric shapes and prime numbers. It's like, that's weird.
You guys maybe should have taken that as a hint to maybe go, whoa, there's something really weird going on here, and maybe we should investigate this as opposed to, just forging forward, because, this seems like it might be horrifically important if you are, doing something that might, kill something here. Oops.
Well, I like it, but the planet was confirmed lifeless. We weren't looking for something that was trying to communicate with us.
So we're just stuck our fingers in our ears, closed our eyes, and hummed as loud as possible as we did our work.
So, on the bridge, Worf and Geordi are analyzing the organism. Some of the components are things I'm going to butcher. Gallium arsenide, which emits light, and cadmium selenidide sulfate, which creates a charge when it is exposed to light. This is important for later.
So it might be photosynthetic. Neat.
But also, it could photosynthesize, but it can also bioilluminate.
So that's why it's flashing at us.
Yeah. Or would it still be bio? Maybe. Geo-illuminate?
Geologically illuminated.
So they start calling the organism a microbrain for some reason.
Well, it seems to have a complex network of communication bits in it. It's poking at us communication-wise. So even if it's not, self-aware, it seems to be at least trying to think. So microbrain is kind of a fitting thing. But,
It's just one of the dumbest names.
But, I think they could probably do better, yeah.
So it breaks out of the sickbay quarantine, has a lot of little flashy lights now.
It just keeps spawning.
It actually really reminds me of if you've been on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, like I don't know if they've changed it, but especially the old one, the first area where you're going through like the Louisiana swamp and they have all the little fake fireflies.
It's been ages since I've been there.
So anyway, they theorize that each individual piece of it operates sort of like a brain cell or computer component. So every time it creates another one, it becomes smarter.
Ooh, it's going to be mildly intelligent soon.
And now this one has like 5 brain cells, which is way more than most of our 2 brain cells to rub together,
Yeah. Well, I guess that does have some implications for other episodes because Q several times calls Worf microbrain. So, if this microbrain here is way more intelligent than the rest of us already, that's actually not an insult. It's like Worf, you're actually very smart here, but I'm going to say it in a condescending way. So,
Gee, Worf, you're as smart as the microbrains.
Just smarter than the rest of these fools. Ha 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 ha.
So microbrain becomes large enough to access the universal translator. It addresses the crew as ugly bags of mostly water, which something Data points out is accurate. Because, humans full of water. Squishy.
Now I believe he also says like 97%, which is ridiculously high. Like maybe in the future, humans are actually just water balloons with, a few things on the outside to make us look like humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The great hydro war of 2040.
Only the most hydrated persons can survive it.
That's how they keep telling you to drink water now.
That's the end goal, to turn us into water balloon people.
So the microbrain calls them an invader, because they are. They have been killing them. They tried to communicate, but they ignored it all, and then eventually they were left with no choice but to fight back.
Yeah, we're going to take your laser and shoot you with it, so, yeah.
Troyes tries to explain that they didn't know the brain was there, but it points out that Mandel did, so now they're at war.
Well, could you just be at war with Mandel? He's kind of a dick.
And to illustrate its point, the microbrain shakes the ship because it's got complete control of the computer.
Maybe we should have safeguards against this sort of thing?
Yeah, that could be helpful. The number of times this just happens. So they speculate that the unusual layer of thin salt water connects all of the microbrains and lets them communicate like brain cells. And the terraforming team started to siphon off the water, and it began killing them all. So it would have destroyed this entire species.
In effect, they were sucking out their brain fluids.
They noticed that the microbrain has to rest after it replicates itself. So they try to beam it away as soon as it replicates. But this doesn't work. They are now at a complete loss of how to get rid of this thing until Geordi remembers the photosensitive materials and speculates that it must gain power from the sunlight filtering into the sand. So since they've lost control of the computer, Riker goes down to sickbay and hits the light switch.
My, ultimate power to flip a light switch. We could also just have sent down any random crew member that just happens to be in the area, right?
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have Riker getting his big moment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So no sooner is the room dark than the brain starts to suffer and begs for light. Picard tells him that they'll give it to him if he agrees to end the war. Forced with destruction, the brain agrees. Riker begins to bring the lights back slowly as a peace offering. The brain asks them never to return, and they promise that they won't come back for like 3 centuries, because then they can talk. Maybe then we'll be ready. I don't know how these random alien things are always like, someday you might be ready. Give it 300 years. I'm sure your species will have figured the shit out by then.
Well, maybe it's sort of like one of those, come back in one of our millennia, which is 300 of your years, or one galactic minute, which is 700 of your years.
So Riker heads back to the lab to see that the brain thing has become a large crystal.
And it's it's kind of adorable.
He gives the transporter coordinates, and they beam it back to the sand part of the watery planet.
So go away, and we'll never come back here. Bye.
The terraformers are all sort of upset that they almost wiped out an entire intelligent species, but, it's all good now.
So, you terraformers, what are you going to do now?
Go terraform?
Yeah. go. There's like a Ceti Alpha sort of place I hear about doesn't have any life on it. Maybe check that out.
So Picard indicates that the planet is under quarantine now. He's dropped a buoy or something. So the planet's going to be left alone. They return the terraformers to a nearby starbase, and we hope we've all learned a lesson about killing off native life forms.
Yeah, so don't do it, guys. So that was a decent episode, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it wasn't bad. I think it works out as an episode. They think about some stuff. They do things. It resolves itself in an odd way.
Yeah, I suppose the main failing of characters in here is one of the guest stars who is, just so invested in their work that they, refuse to see any sort of alternative way forward that would have them not do what they love doing. So their passion is coming up against the reality, so they ignore the reality.
I do think this is a very interesting place to go with something like this, because no one is being intentionally cruel or trying to kill off the native thing, or not even caring about the fact that there's a life form there. Mm-hmm. This entire episode is about broad institutional failure. Yeah, someone higher up the chain was supposed to check this for me, and they failed at their job, which means that now I'm doing something horrible by doing my job.
Indeed. I'm so invested in doing my job that I'm not going to question anything about the situation, partially from personal investment and also that I have the insurances. And that should be good enough, right?
Some of the stuff they talk about, the things suddenly flashing up random geometric shapes and essentially writing "help us" in the sand. Some of the stuff seems a bit far-fetched to imagine someone ignoring. But yes. if we just take it as hyperbole, then you can really get into a mindset where, yeah, you're supposed to be doing this job. You see some weird things happening, but it's easy to dismiss weird things happening. Weird things happen all the time. Someone else already told you this is fine.
And, it might be a case where, the geometric shapes where you kind of have to tilt your head to sort of see it sort of as well. So that maybe they're like, I see it, but maybe it's not really there. I can maybe pretend it's not, even though I'm pretty sure it is. And so you kind of start to lie to yourself in order to get around it. And as more, things get more and more clear, you've already kind of invested in that lie. So to suddenly go back on it would be, betraying your previous self and what you've already established as far as your understanding the situation. And that's kind of a general human failing.
Yeah, you have that with Mandel, too, a lot in this episode of just, if I had ignored this and I am killing something, that would mean I'm doing something horrible. Mm-hmm. So I must not be, because I wouldn't do a horrible thing.
Therefore, this is not what everyone is telling me it is. There. Cognitive dissonance and things like that kind of factor into all this, and suddenly you find yourself, backing up something that you would never have backed up in a million years, all because you've sort of dug yourself this hole of, particular reasoning. And you got a couple, your coworkers kind of helping out, being all like, we're kind of going along with you, but you keep telling us to ignore it, so we don't bring up our further objections, which doesn't challenge your thinking, etc., and it loops back again, sort of building a narrative of everything's fine, don't worry about it.
And the way that the institution is continually brought up to justify what they're doing, I think is kind of interesting, because these episodes, like Home Soil, Devil in the Dark, which very closely parallels Home Soil, these are much more colonialist episodes than any of their "we are going to tackle colonialism" episodes are.
Yeah.
Because all of their "we're going to look at colonialism" episodes are dealing with stereotypes of native peoples or some sort of thinly veiled stereotypes of native peoples. You're always showing the crew to be 100% in the right. They care about life and rights and all of this jazz. It's a very America's not an empire, no really go away style of colonial thinking.
Well, this is more of a we don't understand what we're dealing with, and so when we kind of stomp in and start doing our thing, to have it suddenly come through that maybe we are in the wrong is kind of a shock. And, even if in retrospect it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, you hit two things. It's one is we weren't doing anything wrong. In Devil in the Dark, they were mining. It's a necessary thing, which happens a lot with this kind of stuff, like an ignoring of native land rights, or these people aren't actually using this land for anything, and we want to come in and do something industrial like mining, and that supersedes anybody else's right to get to live here because they weren't doing the mining. If they wanted this thing, they should have been mining.
And they weren't, so therefore it should be ours now.
Yeah.
QED.
And this, you hit an interesting thing with the terraforming, because that's very similar. This planet is not a useful planet for humans to live on, which makes it of no concern. Like, we want to make this planet useful. So terraforming is kind of an interesting parallel to the industrial exploitation that you have in modern and semi-modern colonialism, which is like, we are going to go do useful things with this land that is essentially useless now, regardless of what else is going on. Which I think is also, even if you remove the life form part of this episode, they have here what is essentially a completely unique planet as far as we're aware.
Yeah.
It has completely unique geology, which a lot of planets would. But this one's weird. It's got completely unique geology. It has standing water and no life forms, which in itself is strange.
That might have been maybe a tip off that,
Mm-hmm. And all these other things that make it odd, but we're still going to essentially destroy it in order to make something that is useful for humans.
Is the natural beauty, the wonders of geology, all of that, maybe we should be factoring some of these into our calculations when we decide to, dig a hole there versus there.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. It's kind of the way that we talk about Mars now. Like, Mars is a completely unique ecosystem. Mm-hmm. We don't even know if there's life there to begin with, but even without that, it's a completely unique place. It does not exist anywhere else in the galaxy, as far as we're aware. It's like its own thing. It has unique geology that does not exist on Earth or any other planet in the solar system. If you go to Mars and you terraform Mars, you are completely changing what is already there. And do you have the right to do that? Like, what gives you the right to do that? Why do you get to do that? Because no one else is living there? That's like a bigger start than we usually have, to be fair.
Usually we have to deal with the people here complaining about us just showing up and planting a flag.
But the other thing that you get in this episode very specifically is the institutional reassurance that you're not doing anything wrong, which is how we looked at the exploitation of native peoples for a very, very long time. In a lot of ways we still do, because there's a lot of holdover from that. Like, of course you aren't doing anything wrong by going to America, enslaving a bunch of people, and stealing their land. The government that you work for has told you so.
So, don't have any moral qualms about it. It's A-okay, folks.
And even going so far, this is a bit of a stretched metaphor, I will admit. I don't think it's what they intended at all.
Go for it. I was going to go to that one anyway, so go for it.
By saying that this is not a life form, because it's so different from any life form we know, that's very similar to the way that we talk about native and other non-white people in antiquity as subhuman. like not quite counting as human or life as we want to define it, with rights and other privileges, so that we can just do whatever we want.
It is so foreign, so alien, that it can't possibly be like us and, be able to operate in what we view as our society, and we only view that society as the one that is valid.
Yeah, even so, going so far as to when you get into the really horrible stuff that we had with like race science, where we were trying to use more modern understandings of evolution and biology to justify why some people are just innately inferior to others, and therefore their exploitation doesn't matter.
And thus you should not feel bad about doing it. And
yes,
unfortunately, there's still people that push that crap. Ugh.
And of course, looking at this episode through a colonialist lens, which it really lends itself to, again, I don't think this was the intended messaging behind this episode. You hit the same problem that you always do. We hit it with Devil in the Dark, we hit it here, we hit it in all kinds of different places through Star Trek and other sci-fi when you're dealing with native populations, especially something like this, where like, well, we didn't know there were life forms here. They rolled up. They killed, according to the text, thousands of individuals of this species.
Yes.
And then go, whoops, our bad.
Yeah, we'll put you back and all good now, right?
Yeah, nobody should hold a grudge. In fact, it would be wrong of this life form to hold a grudge. We know that it's wrong of them to hold a grudge because it was perfectly okay for Picard to torture one of them.
So maybe the life forms there should be asking for something beyond just go away. Not just go away, don't just put up a quarantine here, but maybe, I don't know, make some repairs to our environment before you go, or, maybe give us some resources so we could do the repairs ourselves, and, and so at least some extra token there that maybe would be a start to a longer term relationship, even if that relationship doesn't pick up again for a few centuries. The last time we saw you guys, you were dicks, and we're now willing to talk to you about it. Sort of vibe I'm getting here is something, but, maybe, okay, you guys were dicks, but you at least made a token gesture of, trying to, fix your divot here, might be a better way to go forward.
Yeah. I mean, you could show them doing literally anything instead of but we didn't know. Oh my God, this is really so hard on us.
I guess there might be some questions about what the microbrain views as individuals versus the group still, but that's something that the episode doesn't really explore, so
yeah.
We don't know.
So the reason that they get away with this is the same reason that you get away with this in the real world, is at the end, the microbrains are understandably upset. They are trying to defend themselves in a pretty understandable way. We, as the audience, are supposed to view this as unfair, or at the very least incredibly unfortunate. And Picard demonstrates that they have the power to kill off all of them whenever they want. And that's the resolution of the episode. They are benevolent colonialists in that they do have the power and technology to kill off every single member of this species whenever they feel like it, without them being able to do anything about it. But because we're so great, we are choosing not to, and you need to be very happy about that.
Thanks, I guess. But, maybe you could have just talked to us like another, sapient being here, and maybe we could have had a conversation, as opposed to kind of backhand threatening us.
Like, the resolution of this episode is essentially, you come to a planet, I don't know why, like, you land and don't notice that you've just squished 20 people. The people who live there are very mad about this, try to attack you. You hold a gun to one of their heads and go, this is an unfortunate accident. We didn't know we killed a bunch of people. And they go, okay, fine, you're right, just leave.
Yeah. Because then it's like, all right, if we let you leave, you'll put the gun down, right? Oh, sure. I guess I gotta trust you.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So, this definitely feels unfair for the microbrain folks.
And it feels unfair because it's this the same sort of unexamined colonialist thinking that we get through a lot of Star Trek, because we haven't gotten to the place of examining it. Even now, even modern Star Trek doesn't really do this.
Yeah, it might be interesting to have some of that. I'm have some fingers crossed that Prodigy maybe touches upon that, because they got some stuff there with, we met the Federation and then terrible things happened.
Well, you've got a particular inherent tension, because this type of science fiction, the Star Trek type of science fiction, its core being is an age of exploration show. You have just swapped out English tall ships for spaceships. That's all you've done. Like, you've swapped out ships, like boats for spaceships. You've swapped out planets for islands. It's fundamentally an age of exploration show. The age of exploration has to ignore colonialism in order to function, because otherwise everything you're doing is terrible. It's not fun and exciting.
Like, oh yes, we're setting up a colony on this island here. There's people here already. We're going to ignore them. And then later it's going to turn to the pirate haven, and well, they're going to be, unhappy with locals as well, but in a different way. And then we'll have a fleet come in and rid all the pirates, and they'll be even more worse to the locals. Well, we could just kind of ignore all of that, then maybe we could have a age exploration story about this that doesn't make us feel bad all the time.
Yeah. And when you had the 60s and into the 80s and 90s, like, this is not a time you were thinking about this sort of thing. You weren't supposed to think about colonialism at the time. Into the 90s, we started getting more and more, which they tried to move away from some of those plots, but then they still have that at the core of the show, which is why some of the things got so muddled and weird when they started trying to tackle more serious concepts.
Yes.
And now we've just decided to ignore it. Like, Discovery's gone off on its weird war plots. Brave New World's gone back to, or Strange New World's gone back to old Star Trek things, which is entertaining, but they're bringing back some of the same problems. And no one knows what Prodigy is doing. And Lower Decks is just making fun of Next Generation. They're not trying to say anything.
I did enjoy the recent episode where it's like the VCR game they're playing at the beginning there.
I had that game. I had the Star
Excellent.
Trek VCR game where the Klingons take over the ship and they just like yell at you while you're sneaking through the ship on the board.
Excellent. I would like to play that someday.
I wonder if you can find a YouTube. Like, I'm sure you could print it out. I wonder if you could find a YouTube version. This could be worth live streaming.
Yeah.
Get some of the Star Trek geeks together.
We're going to experience some bees here. Hold on.
The only other thing that most people bring up is that this is a continuity thing, which they don't worry about. I don't care that Star Trek in this era doesn't care about continuity, but it is just funny with how much we care about continuity now that they've encountered silicon-based life forms at least 4 times by now.
Yeah. In fact, we have Data, who's basically saying, we've not met something that's, non-organic life form. Data.
And this is the thing, the frickin' Horta there, the devil in the dark, it's not and then it slunk off into the darkness never to be seen again. They formed a working relationship with the Federation.
Yep. It's like, oh, you want all this rock that we don't need? Okay. And we'll just keep eating and just pick up what we leave behind. All right.
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't one of these, and we kept it a secret from everyone. No, they work for you now. They're mining for you. For all we know, in this era, they've moved them to other planets.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard some fan talk about, maybe they have Horta, spaceships at this point. Federation, starships that are basically built exactly the same, but they just fill the entire interior with rock of various sorts.
Yeah, that'd be fun. It's like the rock ships from FTL.
Yeah.
I'm honestly surprised that we haven't seen one pop up in Lower Decks yet.
Yeah. Well, hold on hope here then. I mean, they had giant Spock,
Yeah.
I'm afraid I haven't got much more myself here, so shall we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we have done we've done terraforming in the past. We've done silicon life forms in the past. We've done colonialism in the past, and we're going to do colonialism again. I'm sorry, we're very political that way.
Surprise! If you missed some of that leading into this point, I don't know what to say, honestly.
Yeah, why are you here? I'm sorry, but like, what? How did you even find this? We don't have that many people. We're not that popular.
If we do become that popular, and then people start listening, are like, these guys are all political. Yeah, it's allowed.
Okay, yep, we've done enough political stuff for now, so it's time for the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show, where we got ourselves a few glowing lights in the audience today. This is pretty cool. But our contestants have been racking up some points here, so it's about time to hand out some prizes. Our first award, our prize, our super thing, is actually one we had to hand out last time, I believe. Gunshots by computer, which goes to the microbrain via the reprogramming of the laser drill to, kill all humans and things like that. What does the microbrain win, Gepwin?
They win a scope. These things never work right, and I don't know how they're aiming. This one's implied that it's being aimed by the brain thing itself, which, probably doesn't have eyes. Needs something.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's relying on movement or some sort of electro sensor somewhere. Maybe smell. Maybe Data has some smell, but not as strong as like a human. Anyway, our second prize is the Lazy Science Prize, which goes to the terraforming team for not investigating the curious geometric patterns that were somehow just appearing on the sand, among other things. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win a golden record to listen to with all of the stuff that we send out to identify ourselves as life forms to other things, because it tends to include geometric shapes and mathematical patterns.
Indeed. So, maybe you could look at this golden record while you're listening to it, and then look out the window and back to the gold record and look out the window again and go, maybe there's something trying to communicate to us. And then you get confused because suddenly it's all the hellos in the various languages, and you're like, but the universal translator just has it all be hello and greetings from Earth and things like that. Anyway, our last prize is the Oblivious Coworker Prize, which goes to Louisa Kim for not noticing that her coworkers have gotten super shifty of late and are all kind of glancing at each other, and while you're just kind of being all like terraforming school, and stuff. So what does she win, Gepwin?
She wins a trip to terraforming HR. I know people who have worked in these isolated research lab scenarios. It's never good. Mm-hmm. And your coworkers are never good people.
You might want to, get somewhere, with less weird people hanging out here. But at least this project's probably getting shut down for the long haul, so, you don't have to deal with them until, you get assigned to the next project with him. Well, that sucks. Anyway, Gepwin, take us away.
Yeah, make some better terraforming friends.
Yes.
Oh, thank you to the contestants for putting up with all of this, and thanks to all of you for listening to the Galaxy's favorite game show! Woo!
So, are we gonna clone our brains now so we can be smarter?
Yes, but we have to network them somehow.
Ah, yes.
Also, there's whatever that fun thing is where our brains do the opposite thing they're supposed to most of the time, which is more energy intensive but somehow faster. I don't understand it personally. But
do you have a spare Ethernet cable?
Somewhere. I never throw cables away. In a bad habit. You never know when you need a cable. You never know when you need a 6-year-old cable with a weird pin adapter.
This is the one with the 7 pins. Which one's the ground, though? If it's the ground is the long one, it's not the right cable.
So, all right. This, by our episode counting, was episode 139. Which not only means we've been doing this for way too dang long, but for our own sanity, if you're new around here, every few episodes we stop going through the mainline show that we're doing, and we take a break to do a movie or something else. And this time it was Izix's pick, so he's decided to torture us with something truly old.
Yes, something a little different too. That's, I guess, effectively a movie because it's, about that sort of length, and the production values are a little on the cheap end, and then they put out a serialized format, and then they went and lost all the episodes entirely, so it doesn't exist anymore, which makes our job a little harder. But thankfully, in more recent and enlightened times, they decided, we have the audio for this, so we're going to do some animations and things like that and basically recreate the original episodes and, have it be still kind of, a little awkward because, it's from the 60s, but, it's still kind of the same thing. And long story short, we're going to be doing some a little Doctor Who. Dun, dun,
yep,
dun.
Very British, very old.
Yes, so not New Who, not like 80s Doctor Who, not 70s Doctor Who, but like 60s Doctor Who. So, Gepwin, are you ready to have some big, salt and pepper shakers threaten you and things like that?
Yeah, the last time I tried to watch old Doctor Who, me and the person who I was watching it with fell out of the bed in college because we just started laughing too hard at the green bubble wrap creature.
Oh, was this a Tom Baker episode?
Yes.
Yes. The Ark in Space?
Probably.
But yes, so in the ancient times of the 60s, I believe, I'm trying to get the thing, because my information keeps telling us when they lost the episode, but when was it actually made originally? So sometime before 1974.
Well, you're gonna have more research to do on that one. So,
yes,
yeah.
but it's the second Doctor adventure with Patrick Troughton's the second Doctor. This is actually his first adventure. So he's basically starts out like just freshly regenerated, and it's like, well, I'm going to go wander around now. My companions, you can kind of hang out with me if you like. It's adventure time, guys. And so he gets himself into a little trouble. There's some mistaken identity as he calls himself the Examiner and things like that. And there's a scientist guide. He's like, I found these weird things here. I think they might be great tools, but there's also like nonsense going on in this colony. And guess what the planet's called?
Is it? Oh yeah, Darlekistan? No, I'm trying to remember what it is. Skaro, that was it.
Not quite. I believe. Now, I haven't rewatched this in a while, but I believe the planet's actually called Vulcan. So yeah, the power of the Daleks, Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, Star Trek crossover.
Yes. An interesting bit of trivia: the final adventure with Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, was airing when Star Trek, the original series, came to an end. So the epic length adventure, the War Games, was like halfway over when Turnabout Intruder came on TV. So that's a little bit interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So very contemporary.
I wish I had that information in front of me as far as the exact timings of everything. But anyway, Doctor Who, the power of the Daleks. It's very animated, but also not at times.
Yeah, if anybody wants to try to watch this before we do the thing, the only place that either of us has found it easily available is through the Amazon digital video store. There is a full season, like you can buy the entire thing with animated sections for about $10. You can't rent it.
Yes, sorry about that, but it is kind of awesome all the same. And there's a number of things that I have already kind of queued up my brain to talk about in it. So
what was, I keep forgetting the name of this thing. Something of the Daleks. Danger?
Power.
There we go.
Yes.
So generic.
Well, there's actually an in-adventure reason for that name, but we'll get to that when we do.
Yeah, so Power of the Daleks. You can find it on Amazon or possibly track it down somewhere. Maybe read a synopsis if you are interested. Otherwise, we'll be talking about it next time.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, all power to the Daleks. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.